Greetings, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, episode number 52 with Dr. Saby Labor, a good friend of mine. I've worked with her on her own podcast for a while now, and I was really excited to have her on as one of the first guests of season 3 here. I can't think of anyone better who appreciates the podcasting game and is doing some really great work with her own show, like I said, and her speaking and other kind of advocacy work, and her work as a director of a LGBTQ campus resource center. So we'll talk about her journey, some reflections of hers, what's grabbing her attention, what she's geeking out about, both like personally and professionally and all that good stuff. So really appreciate all that Saby shared. You can check out all of the stuff that she's working on and all the stuff that she mentions in the show notes as usual. And just appreciate you listening to help us kick off season 3 of the podcast. So without further ado, this is episode number 52 with Saby Labor. Cool. Well, yeah, I mean, I appreciate you taking some time out for this because I was just sort of brainstorming some people I feel like it'd be kind of good to get to, because I had like a huge list, and it was more like, because like you were on kind of like my general list and just like, who would I like to get to like first thing this year? So I do appreciate you making some time for the show here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm super excited about it, and thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, if you want to just kick us off here and just kind of give a brief introduction of who you are and how you got to be where you are today.
My name is Dr. Saby Labor. I use she, her, and her pronouns. I also love they, them, and their pronouns. I have worked in higher ed since 2006. I was counting the years just a few minutes ago. Mm-hmm. That's quite a while. And I worked in different functional areas, and some of those have been college access, supporting first-generation students, residential life, housing, athletics, sexual violence prevention. I've also coordinated gender-based education services in a women's and LGBTQ center, and then currently I'm a director of an LGBTQ campus resource center located here in the Midwest. And I also run a business called Resilient Campus, and that is a business that I founded in 2016. Oddly enough, it also, time has been skewed since I worked on my dissertation, so I'm constantly in awe of what seems like short term and what seems a lot longer in my own understanding of time. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
It seems like they're all sort of in like the same realm of very much manifesting the idea that I've had in certain contexts of like, you know, working within kind of the student affairs realm of higher education, and certainly a lot of things that you were doing. I know it's not like formally your background, but it's kind of like the, you know, the more like social work kind of like aspects or something, like you're working on like really like important kind of like sensitive things that can happen on a college campus, and those like areas where a lot of learning can happen and identity development, those sort of things. Like, and I don't know if it was like sort of simple things, or it also could kind of rope in, because yeah, like you do speaking, you do podcasting, like it's all these different like sort of, you know, different areas that you've explored and worked in, and different things that you've done. Like, but I guess before we get to anything else, like what are sort of like maybe like the decision points of like going from one place to another, one job to another, like doing all these different things? Because I think it, and I hope and I assume like it's given you a lot, you know, in terms of just your understanding of the complexities of this work and appreciation for different functional areas and all those different things. But I guess like, what was sort of like that journey and that process of like, you know, all these different things that you have done and you are still currently doing? I guess what was that journey like for you in terms of like deciding to speak and deciding to do a podcast and like, you know, going from one job to the next? I know sometimes it's just like, you're like, oh, well, I was moving, so I needed to get a new job or something, like, you know, simple stuff like that. But I guess anything that comes to mind in terms of just like that journey of going through all these different aspects of student affairs work.
Yeah, I think that my journey has really highlighted the simple fact that we can plan all we want, but life is going to just throw us in different directions and provide us different opportunities to make choices along the way. So I can't, what's interesting about your question is that I'm in an effort to like pinpoint moments in time where there was a clear decision to be made.
Right.
They're often within this indiscernible sort of span of life events, the seeming option to have agency and make a decision, changing career paths, or changing location because I used to live in LA and
Hmm.
now I live in Minneapolis. And that was a big transition that choice wasn't made overnight. And so I think that's one of the things in student affairs that I realize is that there's this socialization that happens about sort of what some of the ideal pathways are. Like you find student affairs, you go into a master's program, you do your national or geographically limited job search, and you jump from functional area to functional area or campus to campus within a functional area to then sort of do that leapfrog like career journey to
Hmm.
get promoted or to have new tasks or responsibilities in your portfolio. And I've heard from a lot of people that there is a pressure to conform to some aspirational way of moving along in this career trajectory that we call student affairs. And I've talked with other people that feel this way, but I personally have really struggled with that blueprint in a sense, and that I feel like the work is complex, like you noted, and doing something like, you know, LGBTQ based work or sexual violence prevention work, it is really challenging within some of the siloed structures that we have in higher ed. Like we have a women's center, for example, and we have a person doing Title IX and sexual violence prevention work. Um, and great, if those people get along, if those people are colleagues, if those people find ways to work together, they will work together. If there's some structural way that collaborations are supported, that will happen. So
Hmm.
there's so many variables that lead you to maybe not collaborating with offices and not doing intersectional work or cross issue work with other colleagues on a campus, for example. So I think I've definitely noted that even though we have these functional areas and we have a lot of silos within higher education, for example, that I've tried to find ways to do the work that aligns most closely with my values and with the work that I want to be doing in that time period, if that makes sense. So I'm really learning how to be present with the work I want to do now, the work I'm passionate about now, because for me it's been about how to spend my life resource, right? Like my time, my energy, my interest, my capacity towards something. And that something has been serving other people, helping students to learn from the lessons that I grappled with and that I struggled through in college, for example. So I don't know, it's never been simple, it's never been clear. I think the one unifying pattern that I've noticed is that at each phase and each sort of decision making point of time, there was always someone that believed in me. Even if I didn't fully believe in myself,
Hmm.
there was always someone that said, yeah, you could do that. And I was like, well, I'm not sure if that's for me. So that was always helpful to have another voice or another perspective, another like a sounding board.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's just like a good piece of advice is like people find their own ways and have the ability or the power to uh, help other people figure those things out. Like I remember sometimes, I guess the one time most salient was like what kind of got me into this whole higher ed scene was just even applying to be an RA in the first place. It was just somebody kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said like, "Hey, you might be good for this kind of thing." And just those like little nudges, the motivation, the encouragement, and stuff can really help people and making decisions. But yeah, I think it's a lot of good stuff from what you said. Yeah, of just like it is just kind of how it is nowadays. I think with young people building their careers, they're going to be kind of, transient from one job to the next and like geographically and those sort of things. And that can just kind of happen upon you for any number of reasons. Or if you are trying to, build your career, it's almost what's required at this point. It's an anomaly for somebody to like, spend a whole lot of time at one place. And if you can, that's awesome. And if it's a place that you enjoy being at, even better. But yeah, sometimes that being like, yeah, happening upon you and not feeling like you had the full choice to make decisions and stuff like that. So, yeah, a lot of interesting things to kind of go over. And I guess I don't know if any of this in terms of like, these interests that you have and your values and kind of letting those help drive you? Like, I always like to hear kind of people's origin stories, like college being this like formative time, or like when they were younger, kind of whatever that may be. Like, what do you feel like your college experience or graduate school experience or anything, like what was kind of like the most formative time that was kind of your origin story, maybe that kind of, initially set you on this path or just kind of taught you a lot of good life lessons?
Yeah, I think my experience in the California community colleges was really formative for me. I went to high school in a really small town. My college counselor, when I asked her about going to UC Berkeley, because I had gotten or was it UCLA? I can't remember. It was like a, a brochure I got in the mail. It was
Right.
this big, like, cardstock, super glossy. It looked like it was fancy.
Hmm.
It was addressed to me, to my house as a high schooler. And I thought, wow, I'm getting mail. These people want me to apply there. And I remember bringing it to my college counselor, and she said, yeah, no, you're not going to get in there. That's not a college for you. And you should apply to the community college next door. And in our town, we only had one college, and it was a community college next door to our high school. And so I just remember that, I carry that with me each day. The idea that not only is it powerful that someone believes in you, and for that to synergize your own thoughts about your abilities or possibilities for your life, or contradict and be that sounding board to help you get over imposter syndrome or move through it in a way that we have these conversations with ourselves about what we can do. I know I have them a lot with myself about who am I? Why do people invite me into certain conversations? Kind of struggling with my own feelings of just being an imposter constantly. And I think that early experience definitely made me recoil back into a protective shell of, putting yourself out there, feeling vulnerable, having excitement and some pure joy experiences as a high school student, saying, this is what I imagine on my horizon. I can do this. Tell me more about it. And just being completely shut down was a really, really important experience for me today as someone that's now supporting college students and making sure that we don't do that again. And that working in the high school environments, making sure that we don't send those messages to students that there's an opportunity that is prohibited for them. So that experience was really formative. I also, just being a first generation student in a California community college, I worked a lot while I was a student, and I really didn't access any of I didn't know, how to access advising. I didn't
Hmm.
know what all these programs were at the time. I didn't know I was a first generation student. I didn't have that language. So it gave me the opportunity, and I failed a lot at it, to ask questions and ask for help and be puzzled and put yourself out there and say, the words you just said, either separately or in combination, they didn't make any sense to me. Can you explain it a different way? Um, that allowed me to just, like, I think persistence was the key theme there. Was, okay, wow, this day was, I feel like I failed today, just getting back up tomorrow and deciding to go to class. Yeah, so that community college was a really important time for me.
Hmm.
uh, and then I transferred. I sort of advised myself using the California colleges. They have a more of like a master plan across the Cal States and the UCs and the community colleges. So I was able to, because I didn't know how to access academic advising. So I just advised myself using this piece of paper to be able to know how to transfer. And that was a really important time for me as well, because I was in these cross generational classes. I was with a lot of working adults in at Cal State Los Angeles, and I also struggled with asking questions and not knowing where to even start with some of my questions, and not even knowing if the campus was set up or even cared about some of the challenges I was encountering. And, just not knowing what I didn't know was something I grappled with constantly. But again, I had someone named Jorge Uranga who believed in me. he gave me I volunteered for his organization. He led a civic, what do you call, service learning, community engagement unit on campus. And he offered me a job. He offered me a work study job. And I was like, are you sure? Me? You want to hire me? And then he was able to help get me my first professional job in college access for a Gear Up program. So it was the series of people believing in me and just saying, just put yourself out there. It's going to be fine. So those are all things I carry with me today. And I don't take those lessons lightly.
No, yeah. I mean, they're important ones. I think, yeah, like you're saying before, like initially appreciating the role that like mentors and advocates and people, encouraging you, like that can have a really positive impact. But then, often the inverse of that, the impact that people can have in terms of just, they might think that they're doing you a favor or something like, oh, no, don't even bother with that. That's not for you. It's like that, really can set in a formula or, this kind of script in your mind of, who you are and what you're capable of. And, yeah, just kind of the power on both sides. But, knowing your experience, having that not be, having that be common for other people. And most people assume like, oh, we don't have to, rethink how we kind of like put ourselves out there in terms of people accessing our office or something like that. It's like, no, some people like, they don't know what they don't know. They don't even know how to, reach out to us or find us or where we are and those sort of things. And, it doesn't hurt to just sort of work from that place to kind of open up access to important resources that can be really helpful for people and those sort of things. So, yeah, I mean, that's a lot of good stuff. And I mean, it's good, yeah, that those are like sort of resonant things for you in your story that kind of help inform the work that you do now, which kind of segues to, your current work, which again, Mike, you do a couple of different things with like the speaking, the podcast, and, the work in the office that you are the director of. So I guess, what do you enjoy most about, perhaps just the, it's been like a few months for you, like, working as a director and an office, kind of like, more of that traditional setting, but then of some of the other stuff that you've been working on for a long time, what do you enjoy most about your current work?
Well, one thing you should know about me is I tend to need to immerse myself in several different projects or focus areas in one point. So I'll read several books at one time, just kind of dabble in this one, then switch to this one. The way I set up my life right now is sort of, tailoring to that observation I've made of myself. And I get bored. So I love that each of my days is really different. And then within each day, I get to spend time with students and student leaders, hearing how they're doing and structuring programming with our teammates to be able to produce like resilience outcomes, leadership development, thriving outcomes. And then, I'll go to another meeting where we're doing cross-campus policy work, and then have another meeting where we're planning some overall campus climate engagement. So it's policy work, it's evaluation, it's assessment, and then it's working directly with students. So it has this big picture element where I'm seeing all the big how the pieces fit together into this sort of mosaic of campus climate, for example, or student engagement and persistence, to, retaining employees and like, what does that look like for colleagues to want to stay there, to contribute professionally. And I really enjoy that. If I had to arrive to an office each day and if my routine was exactly the same or very similar, I think I would just burn out. I think that would be burnout for me. The pendulum kind of swings as well when it's too varied, when things are so chaotic or complex, when, then it has to be balanced with having time off on the weekends, for example, or having self-care items to balance out those contributions. But for the most part, I think what I enjoy is that it's different each day, and I get to work on different projects. I get to exercise different skill sets. I can create programs. I can consult on programs and processes, and then I can just work with individual humans. So that's, and just be with them and get to know them and get to support them and be in community with them. So I like all those different things, and that's my day-to-day work on the university campus. And then with Resilient Campus, I think it's I get to work on passion projects. So I worked on my Stay Resilient planner, and having time to format that thing was really important. So that
Mm.
was I also enjoyed that, but I would get so lost in time. I would work on the weekends and the evenings, since I've been in this professional role at the university. And it was just so important for me to lose that time and feel like I was in my flow, because it made me realize like I really enjoyed doing it, and it was something that I was excited to get out there into the world to have impact. So, and then I get to work with a lot of different people on in different organizations and different campuses that are struggling with unique contexts to their campuses or to their organizations, but also pretty similar questions that people are grappling with and pretty similar capacities that they're looking to build. So I don't know, for me, I see them all as these, I'm collecting these pieces that seem to float in the air around me, and I see that they are interconnected. And I think that's one of the vantage points of not only now being on a campus day to day, but I get to work with colleagues across, many different institution types and geographic regions. It's just super rad. Like, I really, I mean, I geek out on all of this stuff. It's like constantly consuming new information, is what I enjoy a lot.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's perfect. I mean, that's exactly like, the kind of people we like is, just that enthusiasm. And I mean, yeah, I mean, and it's good that you, like you said, about yourself, like you like a varied structure, and obviously not kind of yeah, because I think the polarity would not work for anybody of like, you literally do the same things every single day. It's like, okay, well, that might be ridiculous, but also, yes, if it's like every single day, nothing is consistent from day to day. It's like, no, it's like you're saying, even between the 9 to 5 professional role and the other projects that you work on, there's, similar structure or themes and those sort of things. So it's like, just utilizing your skills and your knowledge and just different ways. But yeah, and it's just good that, yeah, you have these different ways and hobbies and things, you can kind of scratch different itches at different times and stuff. But because yeah, and it, like you said, it's like, yourself well and what works for you. And some other people do really want, kind of a more like administrative, like consistent structure kind of thing. And it's just, yeah, like knowing yourself and certainly, as a director, like building a team of good people who have different skill sets and different things and all that. But yeah, it's just really nice, yeah, that you get to have these other projects that you geek out about, which I guess we can explore those a little bit more now. Like whether it is the kind of other projects that you kind of more formally work with, or just other general like hobbies and stuff. Like, what are you geeking out about currently? And I don't know if there's things that you've always been into or stuff that you like got into more recently. But yeah, you can take it kind of either way, like personal and or professional stuff that you kind of like geek out about.
Yeah, I would say in recent years, I really geeked out in, I would say, sort of like two major buckets. And one is I read a lot of nonfiction books, and most of them are tailored to thinking about like habits and productivity and kind of like life hacks, I guess, is
Mm-hmm.
a phrase that people are using now. But just thinking about like resilience holistically, thriving holistically, and just trying to pull little nuggets of information from all these different types of authors and all these different types of like frameworks, that we might not inherently think relate to resilience or relate to thriving or relate to our lives at all. But I sort of take what's relevant and what resonates, and I sort of leave the pieces that don't feel relevant. So I'm constantly immersed in like information collection. I dabble in a lot of different, even platforms. Like I read a lot of hard copy books, but I love online courses. Like,
Mm.
I'm geeking out right now on Creative Live. It's an online platform that my spouse and I signed up for. We've been waiting till December because they have every year they kind of open up like an annual membership. And
Mm.
we're sort of like saving our pennies and waiting to put in for this annual membership. And it's like all these courses on photography, a lot for entrepreneurs and different types of softwares, how to use them to like design books or flyers or whatever you need for like your creative life, your business life. And it's just really well done. Like I was really loving this course I just took on how to turn your service into a product. And it's like in higher ed, I see and hear people doing excellent work. I mean, they are moving these new models, these new innovative ways of doing things and serving students and engaging social justice work, for example. And it's really about how to turn that work, that knowledge, the way that people like facilitate a training, for example, or design a curriculum for their students or a leadership retreat, like taking that knowledge and turning it into something that can then scale out and have impact for other people on other campuses or as one example. So it was this, yeah, it was a couple hours long, but it was in chunks. And I just loved it. I took a lot of notes. I'll probably replay it again just because I probably missed some things.
Mm.
But yeah, I geek out on like online courses. I love, and I would say the second bucket of things like that's not nonfiction books related to like productivity and resilience is I guess like Afrofuturist and speculative fiction books and stories. So like I read Bright City by DC Edwards, who is pretty awesome author and a friend of mine. And then I read this really cool series called Beanty by Nnedi Okorafor. And I don't know, I'm just kind of nerding out and geeking out on like how utopia and like I guess like utopic and dystopic narratives or like frames of understanding our society have such intense meaning for like our social dynamics, our present, our past, our future. I'm just like kind of obsessed with it. And
Mm.
so, but it's so different because like growing up, I wasn't really into, I was into reading, but I read a lot of fiction and it wasn't kind of like sci-fi or speculative fiction. It wasn't anything like I'm reading now, but I was kind of obsessed with like Star Wars, and I thought it was a source of entertainment. You know, like Star Wars is this kind of fun fantasy you escape into this other kind of worldly way of knowing or this other world in a sense. But nothing deeper than that. Like I didn't think like, wow, this makes me think about society or so that's how it's evolved, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, it's like Star Wars probably like, I'm sure some people have like thought and written about this, but like being like this like gateway drug, for lack of a better term, into like sci-fi of just like, yeah, like it's just like a very widely known and accepted kind of thing. And I mean, like Star Trek probably similarly, and you know, it might just be of like what somebody's flavor is because Star Trek tends more towards like that, like, you know, utopic future or whatever. But yeah, it sounds like I guess some of those books are kind of like they're light sci-fi or they're just sort of like predicting or like I don't I guess I'd have to go check them out. We'll link to them in the show notes if folks want to check them out. But yeah, I guess it's neat. Yeah, people just thinking about yeah these different themes and maybe just like playing them out or you know just like writing yeah these fiction stories and stuff. Because yeah, I tend more towards in terms of reading yeah like similar nonfiction stuff to you just about like life or you know some kind of just things that are happening and like advice and kind of life hacks and that kind of stuff. But because yeah, I just like get all my stories really from like video games and movies and TV. So like I don't really read a lot of fiction books, but certainly yeah, like any of those kind of stories. That's always what I love about sci-fi is like yeah they're like playing off themes and you know lessons and those sort of things. But
Right.
yeah, it's all really cool stuff. And I guess yeah, I mean, is there any others like specific things that you'd like want to recommend in terms of yeah like what you're reading or watching or listening to, just anything that comes to mind of kind of your diet of entertainment and those sort of things. And I guess yeah like any like because it's always nice neat to hear like how these hobbies and these interests sort of like positively contribute to your life. So I guess anything else kind of salient there of like any things you might want to recommend.
Yeah. I mean, one, I had this realization as you were talking that these two interests, although they are separate, like looking at nonfiction bodies of scholarship around like resilience and thriving, for example, and then reading speculative fiction, for me, they are related because we're thinking about like what it means to, in today's conditions that we know as reality, like what can we imagine as possibilities for radical transformation or radical decimation? Like what are the span of possibilities? Because I think that part of what we're talking about in community right now is if we can practice this and practice and develop this ability to see the vision that we want to create for tomorrow, then it becomes that much more possible to then enact that future, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. So I think that that's something we're talking about. And that relates to both a book and a podcast that I'm just super obsessed with. And I know some of my colleagues on campus, we just like totally geek out on the podcast, How to Survive the End of the World. And that's with Adrienne Ree Brown and Autumn Brown. And then I'm also equally obsessed with the emergent strategy book that Adrienne Ree Brown wrote recently. And so, like, yesterday I was listening to their podcast, and sometimes they'll have guests on, and then sometimes it'll just be these two sisters talking to each other. And they are just like the ray of sunshine, laughter, heartbreak, like all of the all of the emotions that I
Hmm.
need in the day. Like they help me ground in those. Um, but yesterday they just, and I feel like people around me are wondering, am I talking to myself? Like, am I actually on the phone talking to someone? Because I have my headphones on and I'm like, yes, oh, and I'm laughing and I'm like, oh, that's so real. You're just totally talking to myself. Anyways, so yesterday was one of those days, and they were talking about burnout in one part of the show, and Adrienne Ree Brown said, she realized that Autumn Brown was going to need a sabbatical from all the work that Autumn has been doing this year, and just needs a break. So they were talking about how it was important for Adrienne Marie to see that her sister needed that sabbatical, that time off, because Adrienne Marie said, I'm somewhat of a burnout expert, right? Like what I know is that by the time that you're burnt out, you're already crispy. and
Yeah.
and when she said that, I was like, oh my God, of course. Like it just clicked. And, I did say this out loud and people probably looked at me, but um I don't know, like listening to some podcast gives me these little nuggets of truth that I feel the universe is trying to help me to ground in because it's all around me. So those are connected things that I'm kind of geeking out on right now. I'm listening to that podcast, reading Emergent Strategy in not a very linear fashion, I will say. I'm not reading that book in, like chapter one to chapter two.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that's like if you are just trying to like get through a book, and also if it's always on your bookshelf, you could like go back to it, but you're kind of just like going to what's most relevant at any given time. Like I've done that sometimes. I'm just like if I'm realizing something doesn't really seem to be grabbing me or relevant, I mean, like jump ahead or something. But yeah, I mean, that's what I love about podcasts. I mean, that there's so many of them out there, and I imagine what I've kind of seen as a trend is that they might be starting to like consolidate because it's gonna be tough for especially if people are like trying to make money to be kind of like space for everybody. But at the very least, like this moment that we have now, it's like point of views from so many different kind of people. And if you keep a healthy diet of a lot of different shows, you're kind of directly hearing right into your ears, especially these where people are very forthcoming about their stories and their struggles and, just advice from their experience. None of us should ever put, all of our stock in one person because I think we've seen a lot lately. It's like human beings are just naturally flawed. So we're going to like dig up something from somebody's past, or they're just going to like fumble. And it's like, oh my gosh, they're not like this perfect, icon of, one thing or another. So it's like, yeah, if you kind of take everybody's perspective and, nobody's ever going to, always have the right answer to every problem or something. But if you hear a lot from different perspectives, you can appreciate different people's experiences and maybe, just kind of put something together that kind of uniquely works for you. But yeah, that's great. And I think that is like one really good anecdote from those of just like, if you have reached this status of, burnt out, it's like, yeah, like you're done. That's it. Like there's nothing left. It's like you have to catch yourself in the process of burning out and kind of get the fire extinguisher, kind of put out that, whatever is kind of cooking you there. So, because it's like sometimes, yeah, it's just those one little thing. Yeah, like something clicks into place and it can kind of reshape how you're looking at, whatever you're going through, or if something kind of comes at you, it's like, you can kind of deal with it in perhaps a better way. But yeah, and I guess anything else like, quick, like rapid fire maybe that you'd want to recommend, I guess, like anything that you're reading, watching, and or listening to?
Yeah, I mean, the Chase Jarvis Live Show is a podcast I listen to, entrepreneurship and creativity. It's the same person that does the Creative Live online learning platform. He's super cool. I listen to Entrepreneurs on Fire, which is another podcast. So entrepreneurship is the theme there. And then I listen to like Oprah's Sunday Soul Sessions. I think those are super Soul Sundays. I just love hearing Oprah. She's really great. And I would say those are kind of my top go-tos. I have a library of a lot of podcasts. I can never decide what to listen to. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's good. That's what I do. Yeah, like I don't like necessarily subscribe to everything that's in my feed, but it might be like, oh, I haven't listened to this one in a little while. I like, grab a couple that seem relevant and stuff. Like, but yeah, there's some of the ones in my feed that it's like I'm subscribed every single week, listening to every episode. Whether it's just like friends hanging out and chatting, or for me, like higher ed tech focused. Like there's some that I like really love listening to and hearing the perspectives on stuff. But yeah, we'll include all of those as well. But yeah, as we wrap up, always like to end things on an optimistic note. What is, something or things that you're looking forward to in your job, life, and or the world?
Yeah, in my job, I get really geeky and excited about strategic planning, which I see as like dreaming and visioning out how we're going to aim our time and energy and resource. So I'm really excited to do that. I just love doing that stuff. And I'm a big nerd, so that's where I get my joy. In my life, my spouse and I are coming up on 8 years together. So that's like a really big deal in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've worked really hard. So that's, we work hard consistently and over the years to like be better humans for ourselves and to each other. So yeah, that's a big accomplishment and a big source of joy, is celebrating that 8 years. And then I would say in the world, with this recent election, I'm really excited about all the like trans, women of color, the non-binary and immigrant leaders that stepped up for political office, and just the ways in which people who had the privilege of voting exercised that right to vote and showed up to do that. So that really gave me optimism in a really kind of dark, I think, political time with this administration. So I think that was something that was really important to help me think like, yeah, things could move in the right direction one day soon, after having many days of not feeling that was a truth. So yeah, I think those are, what are you excited about, Dustin? I've been sharing about what I'm excited about, but what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly, similar stuff. Like, for me, I'm coming up on like a 2-year wedding anniversary with my wife. So it's like always nice, like thinking about those milestones, like personally with, the person who's like the closest to me and, one of the longer relationships in my life, just like, because I think, yeah, that's like my own stuff, but like, it's like I've moved around a lot, for like college and jobs and stuff. And just like, realizing too, some friendships that I've like really felt in this past year, I was grateful to spend time with people. So I think, always just looking forward to the next, time I can get together with people and celebrating anniversaries and milestones and that kind of stuff. And certainly, yeah, like the glimmer of hope and optimism with the political climate it was just really impressive to see, like you were saying, like all the, all the firsts that we're having, like it's just neat to be able to witness that. But on the geeky side, I guess personally, like a lot of good movies coming up this year, like all the superhero comic book stuff. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And I mean, I've been able to, with my job, which is certainly something that I just continue to look forward to, which is always nice. Like, kind of the next thing with the job, like working remotely and have a lot more flexibility and not having to commute and all that kind of stuff. Like being able to make space in my life for more of the things that I enjoy, like, my geeky hobbies and time to hang out and travel and, see people and that kind of stuff. So, so I think it's nice, feeling like heading into this calendar year in a good place and kind of trying to continue the, like the self-improvement stuff and different habits that I've been working on. So I think, I think certainly I would, second a lot of the things. For my own self that you mentioned, but it's always just that work that I try to do of just like, no matter what, just try to be optimistic in general, and then always, have something to look forward to, kind of more specifically. But so, I guess like as of the recording of this, I think, because I think the movie that I'm looking forward to, I was like Captain Marvel is coming out in March, so I'm really looking forward to that, and have some trips coming up. Went down to Florida to see my mom, so that's gonna be great. So
Cool.
But so I mean, all good stuff. Appreciate you sharing all that you did and recommending some awesome stuff to check out, and we'll have all the ways that people can find your work and connect with you and all that. So definitely connect with Saby, and I know like the whole library of your podcast and that planner I saw is like really great too. So we'll have links to all that stuff. And again, just thank you so much for hanging out and chatting. And just really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dustin. I know that there's a lot of work that goes into a podcast episode. So thanks for putting in, the legwork on this one. And just thanks for your consistency with your podcast and trying to have impact in that way. It's really important, and I really appreciate it.
This podcast is part of the ConnectEDU Podcast Network, bringing together diverse voices in the higher ed community. Check us out on Twitter at ConnectEDUPod or at ConnectEDU.network. Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast.